review town council rules and town code. This meeting's been held in the town of Barnstable Selectmen's Conference Room. It's August 27th, time is 5:30. This meeting is being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting. If so, please to make their presence known. And nobody has stepped forward on that. And this meeting will be replayed via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. We'll start out today. I am acting as the chair because our chair, Chris Clark, is unable to attend today, unless she's by Zoom. She had indicated she might try by Zoom. She's not there. Okay, then I will continue. Okay, the first is the roll call.
Councilors Tamish,
Present.
Turkelson,
Present.
Lutke,
Here.
Clark, Burdick. You have quorum.
Okay, thank you. For public comment, you can utilize the Zoom link or in person. I see we have one person sitting there. I don't know if you're going to make a public comment or not.
I'll do it like similar to what I did before. I'm going to sit over here for.
I guess as Cindy says, you should be as close to this as possible so people can hear you.
Feel like I'm limbo.
You can go right in front, Larry.
Yeah, we'll just pull that chair up here.
Always comforting not to have to be under oath. The last time we were here, in 30th of July, I believe it was, there were three of us. Bob Schulte isn't here today, and neither is Heather. I've tried to reach Heather, and she's traveling. All of us presented something. I gave something in writing, and it had been submitted prior, and Heather gave out a 11-page letter, I think it was. So I just want to find out at some point if those of you that have seen it have looked through it, whether you have any comments about it remains to be seen. And the other thing, I'm working on this constantly. So whatever, Kristen was kind enough to give me a copy with all the yellow on it today. So I'll look through that and compare it to my own notes. And then after this, I'll probably submit another one. So that's where I am at the moment. And I know that it's kind of frustrating to me a little bit that when these hearings, when the public comments are made that, okay, it's on Zoom now. But as soon as it's done, it's not anymore. And the other problem is that there's no dialogue between us when you're discussing things. I brought that up and you made some comment about it.
I mean, it's rebroadcast.
No, but I'm just saying that the ability to communicate further beyond the public comments is not being offered. And that's something that is kind of disappointing. Okay, so I'll let you guys decide what you want to do with that. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll go back to the other side.
All right. So I, for one, will say I appreciate all the comments. I've reviewed them. What I understand we've been doing is going through our rules as they are and editing. And then when we finish that, I would expect, this is my interpretation, that we will go back and look at some of this feedback, look at some of the other municipalities that we've all looked at, and put some things in there that we've all found to be useful from those. So I appreciate all the comment. I do. I know people put a lot of work into putting in the public comment. Anybody else want?
For me, it's not that I don't want to take your comments seriously. It's just that my brain, with the amount of things that we're dealing with on a daily basis, I feel like Karen is leading us through this document, like Betty's saying. And we're kind of going through it in piece by piece and kind of getting that cohesion together and then going back and looking at the other comments and then taking what other comments. And we haven't even touched the other towns.
Exactly.
So I feel like it's just, this is like what we set a task A, go through this document. And I feel like we're just working our way through that.
That's the way I've always understood.
Yeah, so I just don't want you to think we're not taking into what you have to say. We just need to find a place where it inputs for my brain, where it would make sense to me. And I'm only 1 of 5. So that doesn't mean we can't do that today if that's what the group wanted to do. So I appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate the same thing, that I think for us to familiarize ourselves with the documents by talking about it, it's one thing to sit there and go through them and read them, but to flesh them out, talk about them, really helps us to understand them. And as we go through them, we see a deficiency. We intend, at least I would intend, to go through the other documents and pick and choose things that seem to be applicable and would be helpful to us. So, you know, the comments that anyone makes certainly will be evaluated.
And as far as comments during what we're doing, I'm not sure how that would work. I don't know if Karen has any input on that, but I know what you're saying. It's like you're here and you're not participating. And I don't know how other ad hoc committees work, whether other people from the public would walk into a meeting and would be engaging and we're doing something out of turn or not helpful. I don't really know.
To me, I mean, the committee doesn't have a public component to it. So I think certainly submitting whatever you want to submit, but I think if one thing to have one person here, and if there were 5 or 6 people here, to have a general discussion back and forth, I think it would be very distracting to us. And we can't, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't have a situation where, because you're here, Larry, we allow you to participate, but when there's 3 people, we say time out, you know, sit there and be quiet.
I understand that, and I think in reading the existing rules, I think my voice will project. And there's language about talking about debating and the ability for not being able to debate in the public forum. I understand that. I don't want to turn it into a debate. I just want opportunity. There might be some situations where there's some additional things that can be added, but if it can't be, then I'm going to do it. I'll do it in writing. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah. Well, that's, as a matter of fact, we could do that now. We had asked town council to come up with a statement to clarify public comment. So, do you mind if I read that?
No, that'd be great. Yes.
So this is a draft statement to be read before public comment. I wish to remind everyone that no member of the public may speak without first being recognized by the council president or the presiding officer. The public will have an opportunity to speak during the public comment portion of the meeting and during any public hearing on an agenda item. You're free to express your thoughts, opinions, and criticisms during public comment. However, your comments must be directed to the council as a body through the president of the council. You may not speak directly to any individual councilor. You also should not be addressing your comments to anyone else in the room, not to town staff, and not to another member of the audience. Public comment is to be directed to the council. We also ask that the members of the public refrain from making audible comments during the meeting unless they have been recognized to speak by the council president. The council president will request silence in the chamber if anyone ignores this rule. I think that just puts down some ground rules for public comment.
Silence in the chamber.
That's
All right, should we please silence your cell phone? Little addendum there, addendum A,
We'll get to that.
which,
Yeah, I didn't put
Actually,
anything in there for the
sorry.
audience, maybe we should,
Right,
yeah,
there we go.
that's a good point.
is that in here? What you just wrote, that is it in this packet?
What I just
know.
read,
No, it's
no,
not in
but
that
I
package.
can, we can get you a copy.
Yeah.
You want one right here?
You know, if I could just, make one comment in response to the back and forth. I think the committee can obviously choose how it wants to conduct itself, but for the council and also for committee meetings, they're meetings of the body. So they're not an iterative process. They're not a discussion. It's a meeting of the body, and then there are points in the meeting, public comment, if there's a public hearing where the public has the ability to speak, or if there's some other reason why the presiding officer, usually the president, would invite somebody to speak. But they're meetings of the body, and that's why it's not open for discussion.
Which makes sense, because you
also want to get through the meeting.
want to get through the meeting, and you want to have a meeting that's not chaotic, which if people start, you know, back and forth, you're gonna lose all semblance of order.
Do we want this to be, also written for chairs to be read at each meeting such as this, that it would be appropriate? Or do we want this to just be about,
Well, these are the town council rules of procedure, so
Okay.
I think, I mean, a chair could certainly make use of this or adapt it for their purposes, but I'm not sure we would be telling each committee how to conduct
They
itself.
have to do it.
And not every committee has a public comment, I know that's another issue.
Yeah.
And that, the other point I was going to make is with respect to this committee, and I know there have been suggestions and comments, and obviously, you know, you can all review them. But these are the town council's internal rules, and so I do think it's not to say that folks can't make comments, but these are, it's not quite the same as some of the other committee topics, I think.
All right, then, if there's nobody on Zoom to speak, we'll move on to the next item, which we mentioned earlier, which is our continued review. I think we were nearing the last probably quarter of this, maybe we can finish it up today. And that is the item C on the topics. It's the review with Town Attorney Karen Nober of the current Town Council rules as written and published on the Town Council webpage. So anyone at home could follow along on the rules that are on the Town Council webpage. So we're going to continue where we left off with that.
And so maybe before where we left, I did insert some stuff in the beginning in response to some of the discussion at the last meeting. And I
Okay,
tried to
that'd
put
be good.
everything that was new in yellow. I may have missed something, but I tried to remember to do that. So I just added at the very top, and I actually made it the rules of procedure because that's how it's referenced in the charter. And then I just added the beginning, which explains under what authority you're adopting these rules, and it's set forth in the charter. I left as an open question, amending or repealing these rules shall require 2/3 vote, a majority vote. I think it should be of the full council, but I was kind of opening up for whatever you might want to recommend as to what that quantum of vote might be.
well, that's good. I think they have that in the Amherst. I think the Amherst one seems
was
to
pretty
be
good,
the stellar example. And I
Yeah,
think they have that
some of the
right up
next
front
stuff
too. That,
came from that.
and in fact, it shows the amending dates. It's kind of nice. It said it was done this and it shows every time it was amended.
And actually, I think our original version of this shows that as well.
Was it? Okay.
I think,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of added this.
Okay.
So that's a decision point, I guess, for you all, if you like the first paragraph, you know, what you might want to recommend as the quantum of vote.
Right.
I think Amherst did 2/3, but it's open for discussion.
So amending or repealing these rules shall either be 2/3 or majority of the full council. But adopt, when we go before the council to adopt this new set of rules, would that be considered an amendment really to the rules?
I
The current
think
rules?
I think you would be, they exist, so you would be amending the rules with whatever it is you ultimately recommend.
Okay.
And I didn't see anything in the rules, I can double check, but I didn't actually see any existing quantum of vote. And when nothing is specified, it's a majority of the councilors present and voting. That's the default, unless there's some other authority that says something different.
I would like to see a majority of the full council myself, because wanted if the majority of the full council and the council decides its rules. Majority.
Yeah, I would think the
Majority
majority
rule.
would work too.
There's a difference between majority of the full council and majority present and voting. So of the full council is 7, regardless of who's there.
So majority present in voting, and would
I
you,
would say a majority of the full council.
with the full
If
council?
you're gonna change the rules, I think. it should be the full
I would
council.
recommend the full council with whatever quantum you all pick.
Okay. That sounds good. I would put that in as a recommendation.
This whole thing's gonna be a recommendation.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we'll do.
Well, then, I think the
majority of full.
2/3 majority is too high of a bar for this.
For the rules.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll stick with majority of full. Okay, then the next, the code of conduct, I stole liberally from Amherst, but didn't take everything they had. Some of what they had, we had in other parts in the rules here. And then I added some language in the second paragraph about the conflict of interest law and the open meeting law. Didn't really get into the public records law, because to me, we could add that, but I mean, the conflict of interest law really goes to your conduct, and the open meeting law goes directly to the meetings themselves. And again, the meetings of councilors. So see what you think, open to whatever changes.
Yeah, I think this is very good. I know it came up last time. I like that you've talked about the texting and emailing during the meeting.
Yeah.
I like that very much. And the silencing of the cell phones, absolutely.
That all sounds fine.
What if people are just texting or emailing during the meeting?
I did make that distinction that I was
Each
saying,
other.
like, don't communicate with each other that way.
All right, and what if they're communicating with people in the audience? Like, what if I'm texting somebody in the audience who's a member who's sitting, or maybe somebody at home who's watching on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, you all should, I guess, discuss that. I guess I would say you're going to get into issues of policing everybody.
Right.
And there also are going to be legitimate reasons why someone might be looking at their phone or texting a family member at home. So, you know, it's certainly up for discussion. I tried to kind of hone in on the thing that probably shouldn't be occurring,
Which is kind of the deliberation between people
Yeah. I
secretly.
mean, it's
yes.
not really a deliberation until you hit a quorum, but it's just not a good
Still.
practice.
It's not a good sign. It's just the optics, I think it's the word. Optics are good.
Yeah.
People see it. Yeah.
So I mean, I can make changes, but I was trying not to be too draconian and kind of zero in on what the issue might
And
be.
because it came up at the training that basically if I'm in a meeting and I'm texting John Smith over there about an item that's being discussed or something, those records and me texting John and him telling me whatever he wants to tell me related to the item that's going on in the meeting, that is public record because it's happening.
Well, it's a public record because it's a record made or received by a
Yeah.
counselor as a counselor. So
Yeah.
if you left the meeting and the next day you had that same exchange with that person, that's still a public record. So that's not gonna change that.
Now, with the, having our company phone, so to speak now, does that mean they could do this on their private phones without any, or it's still, regardless of whether it's the
Well,
government?
we have the separate vote that you all took to say conduct town business on town devices.
Right,
So, you know, I mean, it's aspirational in the sense that I don't, you know, it's difficult to police that, but
Right.
that is the policy statement that the council has made. So presumably you'll all try your best to comply with that.
correct. Well, I like this, it's a good insert.
Okay, so if there are no changes, we can move on. When I got down to the role of the council president, I added "and vice president" because when I was looking at information about liaisons, I actually noticed that, what was I looking at? I think it was in the code where it said the president and vice president shall designate councilors to serve as liaisons. And I was surprised to see that, but that's why I made that change, because that's actually how the code reads.
Yeah, 11C.
And then 11C talks
Yeah.
about the liaisons specifically, because I know that sometimes there's confusion as to what that role looks like, and that's referenced in the code as well. Yeah, so the rest of this is stuff we have talked about. Maybe really like that. Oh, so I added, if you go to the top, I don't have page numbers, Rule 5D and the top of the next page. We had talked about adding language about the agenda setting process. And so we said that what we talked about last time was the council president shall set deadlines for the submission of agenda items, and then I added with the goal of posting the agenda for Thursday meeting by the preceding Friday, is what we were talking about. So that's me. And then the next page, and Allison can talk a little bit about this, because I know Councilor Burdick was asking, is there case law about making somebody give their name? And so she took a look at that, but the changes here reflect that the chair shall ask whoever comes up to speak to state their name and be asked to state where they live. So I don't know if you want Allison just briefly talk about.
So essentially, what we would be regulating would be anonymous speech. And so there is a Supreme Court case, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York versus Village of Stratton. I think it's 2006 or 2002, I think I have it finished out. But anyway, so that's essentially about like door-to-door canvassing or pamphlet hearing, I think is what they call it. But and there was a canvassing regulation, and they were required to register with the mayor. And the Supreme Court basically said, first of all, this would be anonymous political speech. And because it's, I mean, there's an argument whether or not it's content-based or content neutral, but either way, even if it's content neutral, it's basically, we're not restricting the content of their speech, but rather the time, place, manner. And if you're going to do that, then it needs to be addressing substantial government interest, and it has to be narrowly tailored to serve that interest. So when we're restricting, when we're asking individuals to state their names and where they're from, and say they don't want to do that, and then we say, well, you cannot speak, we need to be able to come up with some substantial government interest as to why we're not allowing them to speak anonymously. It's a very high standard, and the Supreme Court sort of said, and actually there's language that I forget which justice it was, they said it was, you know, offensive to the idea of the First Amendment. And that rather, whether it's anonymous or not, we have the First Amendment right to speak. So because we've created what's called a limited public forum, which is, we are in town hall, but we're creating a public forum during a town council meeting, that gives anyone the opportunity to speak regardless of whether or not they want to give that information. So I think that last time we talked about it, no one was really, I mean, I think everybody's sort of, I know there's a benefit to knowing, you know, they're from Barnstable.
And
Because
most people will tell you.
exactly, we're already limiting the time, you know, that they're speaking for, so 3 minutes from someone who's from Falmouth, you know, it's not, and you know, the substantial government interest to keep them out of our limited public forum, right?
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think we can all probably
So
agree that
they
it's
don't
best.
have to state their, you say they don't have to state their name, but we're
They-
asking them.
We're
to.
asking them to, and then someone either will, or they will say, I don't want to, and when they say, I don't want to, we're not gonna make them. That's basically what it comes down to, so we shifted the language here to say that and shall be asked to.
And
That's
they
the
don't-
additional.
You know, I don't know why we have to say what village, but they just say, you know, town of Barnstable.
I think it's good to know though, because then you want to know if they're potentially your constituent. I mean, Barnstables can be a big place, and they have 7 distinct
Yeah.
villages, so I think.
Because they don't have
People
to say
identify
any of
with
this.
their
Yeah, I think there's an advantage of knowing, but again, maybe they don't wanna tell you, they won't tell you. Right,
Right.
that same case, they discussed the fact that individuals may choose to be anonymous because it may be an unpopular cause or issue that they're speaking on. And we don't wanna preclude individuals from speaking on those issues because they have to identify themselves. So asking, no problem, but if they choose that they wanna remain anonymous, then we have to allow them that
So it's,
way.
you know, please state your name and blah, 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 and if someone says, well, I don't want to, okay, give 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the new language there.
Well, that's much better than having them state their address, because that's.
Yeah, I was shocked when I first got
Yeah,
here, and I
it's
was like,
not
wait a
good.
minute, we're doing that?
Is this where that statement should have to be?
Um,
On the public comment,
Is that what this one, yeah, this one's public comment. I can certainly insert that if you'd like. I didn't know exactly what you wanted me to do with it, and I wanted you all to read it first.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think this is a fine statement as a statement to be made, as a perhaps summary of the rule. But I think it should be in the rules probably, right?
Okay, so insert this somewhere.
Yeah, because you have a mini version of it right there.
Exactly, you have a
Right,
couple of sentences from it.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I wanted to see if there were any changes, in exactly what you wanted me to do with it, so.
And something to think about as we're going forward and, you know, largely based on the previous meeting, but it's also on others. And I know earlier in this subcommittee, we had the discussion about the length of the meetings and anything that could be done to make the meetings more efficient and friendlier in terms of the time constraints. And we had, you know, a lot of public comment that had to do with our agenda last time. And I know there are some municipalities that restrict the public comment to agenda items. And it speaks to how does information or concerns enter into the town of Barnstable? I mean, is it the most, and I'm trying to be, again, efficient with our communication with our constituents. Is it the most efficient way to come to a town council meeting and say something that is not on the agenda? Is that most the efficient way to enter a concern into the town of Barnstable? I mean, I know we have that app that's been mentioned that seems to be a very good way to do it. We don't have to decide it now, but it struck me that, you know, to be efficient in our time, it would be the best thing to have public comment related to agenda items, so we could focus on that. But I know people like to come and bring up whatever they want. In a way, that's nice, but in another way, are we not being effective with how we, as a town, allow information to enter into our system?
I think it's very advantageous for us to just allow people to, if they have to vent, to vent. Sometimes it's beyond the pale, so to speak, but I think it is important to allow the public to feel that they have the ability to redress a grievance or make a comment, whatever they feel is appropriate. I think I've mentioned before that Canton, for example, limits public comment to a half an hour.
That's
Half an hour, they cut it off. They don't care if there's 50 people in line to make public comment at the end of a half an hour. And I think that's wrong.
Right.
I think that as a council, that we should be available to listen to what people have to say. And sometimes they're repetitive from one to another, or they each have their 3 minutes and they string out a 20-minute speech.
Right.
By each doing 3 minutes is a song or something. But I personally think that even though sometimes it's tough to sit there and listen to it, I think it's worthwhile.
Okay.
And that goes back to what we were talking about in terms of the anonymous speech. You know, that was a content neutral restriction, where if we're going to ask people to only speak about agenda items, that's going to be content based. We're limiting what people are actually talking about, and that's going to, you know, that's different than what Canton's doing, which is limiting the time. That's the time, place, and manner restriction. But when you
So we
start
really can't.
restricting what people are saying,
Yeah, I want to look at that a little bit more, only because I know other towns do that.
I've
Doesn't
seen
mean,
some of the
yeah,
other rules.
yeah, so I wanna think about that a little bit more.
Cambridge does it. Cambridge does not allow comments on something that's not on the agenda. But also Cambridge has had 5-hour public comment.
In Cambridge, I believe that.
I think though that when we imagine, think about the family who bought on South Street. And they've come multiple times, and now that's moving that forward, you know, or dangerous intersections, people come.
That's a group home.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like if that would never be an agenda item if we if it wasn't on the agenda, then they don't get to come and say, you know, this is dangerous. This is a public safety issue, so I really wouldn't wanna, I mean, I don't wanna be there for 5 hours either. The last meeting really put things over the edge as far as that was just so bizarre, but, I think it's good, it's a great opportunity for people to come when they feel like they have something important.
And I think it's
The-
their access.
Yeah, it's their way to have an entry into this process. Because if not, it can be a really big process that you, until the item comes up, you might not, then you don't get to speak. I mean, that doesn't seem fair either, because you can really, a group of people can really have an impact on how we think and view what we bring forward as potential things that need to be looked at. And so,
You also can ask people not to be repetitive or to stand up and say, I agree with the comments made by, you know, this individual, so that they're registered, but they're not repeating it and taking up that time again.
and would, I'm just out of curiosity, based on what you were saying, as far as if, like, we had that group, you know, that, like the airport group that came up and there was 5 people, let's just say, I don't remember how many people there were, and you did make a comment, could you please, you
Craig
know,
did
make a
please
comment.
don't be repetitive, and they kept going, are we
kept going.
able at that point to say, yeah, we've heard the first 3 people, or you can't stop them at that point, you've asked them, but you just have to, because that kind of seems like content restriction, if we say, we've heard from these 3, and we don't want to hear from those 3, that doesn't seem right either. You know what
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's actually content restriction, because they're saying what they're saying, right? You're just saying, please don't go, you know, don't continue to go on, we've heard it, unless you have something new to add to what was said before, then go ahead. I think that there's a time management, you know, you're not, content-based restrictions are really, you can't talk about this. And,
Alright.
but I do want to think about in terms of, restricting it to agenda items, because I do feel like a lot of towns do that, and so I wanna, if that was something you wanted to do, we could spend a little time on that. I don't know that that's really the big problem at the meetings, and I think you'd be taking something away from people that I think they value, so I would think about that.
Yeah, right now we have a couple of hot button, obviously, issues. And that's not always the case. And I don't think you want to restrict all public comment just because we have a couple of things going on. I mean, there's always something going on. But, yeah. I would be in favor of this, allowing people to talk. Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for people to feel that somebody's listening to them. I think that's important.
I mean, there are other things too. I mean, you could say, you know, after an hour, you know, we need to get to the agenda, and then we'll go back to public comment at the end of the meeting. Now, people may not appreciate that because then they'd have to stick around, but then you get through the agenda and you're still giving people that opportunity. So, things to think about.
Okay.
Then I think the next Masons. So I wanted to just revisit that, because last time you all had asked about Roberts. A lot of the other towns, as you could see from their rules, rely on Roberts. I know Allison took a little closer look at this, but it does look like Masons is typically used more often by legislatures.
Yeah, so Mason's manual was written by the chief, well, you've used formally the chief assistant secretary of the California Senate. So he, and he was a parliamentarian, and he wrote them with the state legislative chambers in mind. So he geared all of those rules towards their practices. 70 out of 99 state legislative chambers use the Mason's rules. Robert's rules are geared towards private organizations and civic groups, and city councils, county commissions. They function similarly to boards, so they utilize those Robert's rules. in terms of specific differences, it's hard to say unless I have both of them in front of me.
I haven't spent any time with Robert's
I mean,
rules.
and they're both, you know, hundreds of pages long. I will say there's a lot of sources out there to assist, like cheat sheets, things like that, to assist with Robert's rules, because again, I mean, it's the most popular parliamentary procedure in the United States. So no Robert's rules.
Because at the
Masons-
local level, that's
Yeah.
what folks use.
Did we ever just Google what are the differences between Masons?
Yes.
manual and
I've done it in
rules?
so many different ways too, because I wish somebody, you know, and there's different forums that discuss it, but I mean, across the board, they just say, you know, Masons was written with state legislature in mind, and it was written.
Tell.
Yeah, yes,
Because, you know, when I'm looking things up, there are times where I'm like, oh, well, that's not us, you know, and then I'll move on because it's written for legislature. But then there's still plenty of stuff that obviously is applicable. And then the caveat that I just wanted to mention here is when I started to put in some more specifics about motions and things like that, I did that based on Masons. It very well may be the same in Roberts, I just don't know that. So I just wanted to flag that. If we're recommending a change, then we probably want to just take a quick look to see if there's anything significant that changes.
and also to the whole Masons being written with legislative chambers in mind. It specifically taught, or everything I've read specifically says that it's for when state constitutions are silent on certain issues. So everything is pointing in that direction. So like Karen said, there are things that, you know, she can skip over because they don't apply to us. But at the end of the day, it's just so that we have something to go by. So is it wrong? Obviously, I don't think it's wrong to use those rules. We're just going so that there's order.
I mean,
something to
it's a
follow.
choice, it's a choice, and Roberts would be a change, wouldn't be the end of the world. So, you know, that's a recommendation for you all to consider if that's what you want to do. We'll all run out and buy Roberts rules.
Has the town been using Masons consistently through the years?
I believe so. I would have to check as to how far back. Cindy, I don't know if you know.
This came up probably when Jimmy Crocker was town council president. He had the same question: do we follow Roberts or do we follow Masons? And then when we looked at this, we followed Masons because it was what was printed to follow. So they just
Because it was in the rules.
correct.
But how far back in the rules was it Masons?
When it became town council from select board?
Ooh, yeah,
Is that,
yeah,
so from the beginning?
yeah,
Okay, 'cause I don't know the answer to
89
that.
and 90.
Yeah, it was like 89.
yeah. I have all of them all the way back to when the first administrator, when it went into before the council rules. And it was in there as Masons, because that was his question, is why are we following Masons rules when that's mostly legislative?
Well, you're following it now because it's in the rules.
Right, but no, his question was to, the other town attorney, Ruth
Yeah.
Weil, is why was that put in there? Was there a reason why we're doing Masons rather than Roberts?
Did Ruth know?
She did not,
Okay,
she
I
did
was
not.
gonna actually give her a call, but now I won't.
Yeah, she didn't, she said she was gonna look into the history.
Yeah, we can check in our files and legal to see if there's anything on it, but I don't know the history, yeah. So it's really, you know, it's whatever you wanna do.
Why did you know?
If there was some
Or
advantage,
Allison knows it.
I guess if
We'll-
there's some
we'll learn it,
advantage
you know.
to one over the other that you think would be easier or less cumbersome, I mean, I would wanna opt for the easier, less cumbersome.
Yeah,
So-
I don't have a frame of reference
Yeah.
in terms of comparison, because I haven't been using Roberts. You know, I'm used to Masons because I've been using it, and when questions come up, I go learn something new, and, you know, and that's what we do. But again, you know, we could certainly do that with Roberts. So think about it, you don't have to decide today. And then, trying to remember where we left off. I think we left off at the committee, at the.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Actually, I have
11A.
that somewhere.
I was just gonna look over.
Yeah, what did we leave
Yeah, we
on?
left off at 11.
11A?
But we wanna go to, there's
How
roll
do
call.
it doesn't even go to 11A.
I don't have a roll call. Oh, it's in your front, in the, I think,
What?
oh,
No.
no, I have,
You have a full copy.
yeah, it was organized, maybe I have yours and it was paper clean, that's probably what it is, that's yours then.
This is the rest of mine. Okay,
Yeah.
I got it.
I bet you that was one.
All right,
So we
crisis
had-
averted.
So we have rule 8A where you added the all votes taken in meetings in which any counselors participating remotely should be roll call votes. That got added.
That got added, that's in the open meeting law, so there's no way around that. And. let me check my- Cindy, I fixed your title, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so, yeah, so we have just finished rule 11.
Now section 10,
Okay, so rule 11A is where we would start. Oh, but before we go, yeah, that's right, I added some language up here because I had a note to double check with Lynn on the taping of meetings. And this was the language that, well, she suggested this language when we had talked, we had added shall make best efforts. I mean, this is what they do. I like to make best efforts because if something technologically went wrong, you could still have the meeting. You know, so I wouldn't want to say, well, our rules say it has to be videotaped. So
Okay.
this is what they do. But I just added shall make best efforts to do this, just as a flexible thing. They don't file anything with the town clerk, so we took that out. So that's what those changes are. Okay. So that was my note to talk to Lynn, and then starting 11A is where we really left off.
I think
Mine
I
stops
think
here.
what Mary Lou took off the picture, she may have just paperclipped mine, it's your pages to mine.
So, let me see what I did. So I changed the language to reflect the discussion that we had. And then I added some additional language. So the chair of any ad hoc committee shall be selected by vote of the committee, except that the council vote creating the committee may impose additional requirements. So I wanted to give that flexibility to the council as a whole, but the default is the chair, you know, the committee selects the chair. And there's no limit on who that is unless the council says so. Odd number of members, and then I added that sentence at the end. Kristen, you wanted that, or the period of existence as specified by the vote creating the committee shall commence from the date of the first meeting. So if it says you've got 30 days or 60 days, it starts when you first meet.
That makes sense.
Okay.
now, like in this particular instance.
I think you would say seating of the chair, but I just said.
Yeah, no, because that's what you do as a person, right? Hopefully.
I just read, having a meeting, you're ready.
Do you think it's necessary to vote a vice chair? I mean, we talk about voting a chair, like versus out sick, so. Job,
Good.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
Should we, is it better or we just add?
I think you
Yeah,
could
fine.
probably, you could do it either way. I mean, there's no right or wrong there. I think the committees are smaller, so that's probably why it's really just you have a chair. But you could, you know.
I mean, do we want to add a sentence that say ad hoc committees, the committee may choose to elect a vice chair? I mean, because it's not really written whether you can or can't, so it's kind of a little like, I don't know, maybe people would have wanted to if they thought they had the option, I don't know.
I mean,
If you had a committee, maybe that was 9 people large, maybe you'd want a vice chair,
you might.
you know,
Yeah.
versus a smaller committee like this. So I'm just wondering if we want to state it is an option that is designated by the group of people that are going to be working in this capacity as ad hoc. It's like specific to the task or
Well,
specific to the
your
group.
appointments committee, you have a vice chair. Did you guys vote, was that,
That's not an ad hoc committee, that's a
Not an
standing.
ad hoc.
I know it's standing, but I'm just curious, did you do that on your own or is it says in the directions to?
I think the
I just
standing
think
committees
most
have.
standing committees have a
vice
vice,
chair.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking maybe we wanna state something that gives direction to ad hoc committees that may want to have a vice chair, but not a requirement to have one.
Yeah, the appointments committee, to be honest with you, this is the first year they've had a vice chair.
Oh.
We've never had it, we've always just had it, because it's only a committee of 5.
And
There's
that's-
only,
yeah.
there's only 5 on the committee, so the need for a vice chair wasn't needed at the time, so, but they decided as a committee to have a vice chair in the event the chair was absent or couldn't attend, that it, the meeting would be given off to the vice chair. That's why they did it that way.
Just something to think about.
I mean, if you want me, let me know. If you want me to.
Probably. This seems to be working.
Well, you could put in there the chair and or vice chair, just do an and or vice chair. Right,
Well, it's not or, it's, you could add a sentence at the discretion of the committee may select a vice chair by vote of the committee. If that's what you want.
I'm just thinking it would give direction, because again,
Yeah, I think that would
if you
be
get 5
harmless.
people in the room that don't,
I think
never
it'd be
been part of an ad
I
hoc.
will write whatever you want me to write this
I know.
time. I know, you don't have to convince me, you guys.
No, what you just said, I think is what you just said at the
The
discretion.
committee
That's
at its
better.
discretion, they elect the vice
Yeah,
chair.
then
Oh, you're
stop.
so good.
Very good.
Right off the top of his tongue.
So president, big vice chair. Selected by vote of the committee.
And does it say somewhere else? Because that was the problem with Craig, that he couldn't be elected. And
It does.
That-
does say it
does.
later.
It did say
Yeah,
it somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah, it talks about president, vice president.
The next, 11B, the last sentence.
Yes.
So,
I think that makes sense, because you're already running things.
Can it be a vice
So-
chair?
Yeah, that's a question.
actually, if you go down,
I'm gonna put in or vice chair if we're gonna add that sentence. Yeah.
so these, 11B refers to standing and ad hoc.
Yeah, I put that
It's
in because it
kinda
just
weird.
said all committees shall be
Yeah.
advisory, so I figured we should be specific and say that that's what we mean when we say that. They're committees of the council.
Right. No, I just had to get my head around the way it is, because
And the only
I've done reading about ad hoc committees, and now I'm seeing ad hoc committees again discussed down under the next section.
Because like the appointments committee is a standing committee
Right.
of the council.
So are you saying, Betty, to take out the ad hoc statement and put it up under the ad hoc committees?
I'm kind of,
And repeat the statement?
I haven't decided, but I
Yeah.
know when I looked at it, I said,
It's
wait a second,
there.
now I'm hearing about ad hoc again, and I thought I was finished with ad hoc.
Yeah.
So
So
this is committee
just
parameters. so it's
committees in
committee.
general.
Yeah, but we can move stuff around if you want.
No, we'll continue, but
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
I know what
sure.
you're saying, because if you wanted to make it
If
not
I was
confusing,
a member of the public and I wanted
to
to
know
read,
about ad hoc, you would read the
I
ad
would
hoc
read ad hoc
section.
and then I'd go away.
So
And
maybe
then
we
I would
should
have
move,
missed,
maybe we should state that, ad hoc committees of the council shall be advisory to the town council, put that line up under ad hoc committees.
yeah, unless,
And then when we get to the section 11B, it's just say all standing committees of the council, just take. it out.
No, it's-
But the rest of the stuff that's in here also applies to ad hoc
well,
committees.
I think we need to rearrange the whole thing. If there's overarching guidance about committees, maybe that's under council committees.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then if there's things specific
To
to
ad hoc.
to ad hoc, it
Put
goes
that
under ad
second.
hoc, specific to standing, it's in there.
I mean,
Then,
here, I think it's not specific to either one, it's both.
so
That's
maybe
why-
that would be up above, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, it's it says rules 11, it should say rule 11, I'll fix that. So Rule 11 really just talks about the appointment by the president to committees.
So these are the standing committees, these are
Standing
not,
committees.
and this is where we had the big brouhaha.
Well, and then the
Was-
ad hoc committees, the next paragraph says the president may designate the members of ad hoc committees that are established by vote of the council. So
But
this reflects the way it was written before. And essentially, the town code says that ad hoc committees are created by vote of the council. But because the rules said the president designates the members, that's the way we did it. We had the council vote to create the committee, but the president appointed. Then obviously there was some discussion about for the non-council members, how that should be. So I left this the way it is now, but if you want to recommend changes based on the discussion and vote that you all had, that's something I could change. I didn't change it on my own, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I kept it, you know, I may have like reworded things, but I
Yeah,
kept
because
it. I
again, it
kept
says the same thing,
It does
two
say the
different
same
and they are appointed in the exact same manner. And then you mentioned earlier that Craig had a role. Did you say we found that the vice president also has appointment?
Well, yeah.
That was the liaison.
For the liaison, that's yet another
That was the
category,
liaison.
yeah, the liaison, okay.
Yeah, and so here, the standing committees, the difference is you're not creating this, they're standing
They're
committees,
standing
so you don't need a vote of the council because they already exist, like the appointments committee. I don't know if there's anything else, we had talked about the TIF and the tie. I'm not even sure if that is part of this discussion or not, I'm still not clear on what the deal is with that committee. I don't know if there are other standing committees that I can't think of any other than the appointment standing committee. It may have been at one point more.
Well, the tip of it, they have to be tip and top. They
Yeah,
have to
I
be
just
a
don't know
standing-
anything about that. And I don't think
They
it's
just
not
got-
reflected in the code,
No,
the way
they
the
just got
appointments
appointed.
committee is.
I'm assuming.
I know, but it has-
President?
She appointed, yeah.
Because that's a standing committee.
The tip and
I
tie
assume.
originated
Yeah, that
from
committee I don't know.
planning and development under a state statute, I believe, that gives towns and cities the right to establish one for development. So planning and development came up with the concept, and there's just 3 counselors that make the decision, but it's a board of 9 people.
Is it on the,
It is on the website.
So, and it meets only when one is submitted,
An application is.
which is not often. I mean, we went 3 years without ever meeting.
Because the only one you mentioned is the appointments committee, as if that
That's the
is the
only
only one.
that's the only one I'm really aware of.
Yeah, we used to have a standing one, that was the town manager review, town manager search. But that was during a more active time when they were looking, and they just kept the members active, but it didn't meet. But the only one that meets regularly is the appointments committee.
So really, the tip of the tie, they're not council committees, they're town committees. Kind of like, the energy and infrastructure is a committee.
Yeah, it's sort of like.
So it's not a council committee.
Right, it's not a council.
Is that
So
accurate?
Committee, but we make a
Well,
recommendation.
I don't know what the tip of the tie.
But the
We
tip
make
of
a
the tie,
recommendation to the council,
the tip of the tie do,
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
what we
it's
just
not a
voted on
council,
for,
it's not a council committee like appointments is a council committee. It's only council members
It has other
It
people, the
has-
city said it has 9 people.
versus the
Yeah.
tip of the tie have people, regular people, just like,
I mean, we can
Direct-
take a closer look at that. I honestly don't know.
I don't think that they would be considered council committees though, because it has regular people on it that are, I don't even know how
Well,
those
it would
people
be
get
nice
on.
to
How do
address
the
it.
tip of the tie residents get on there? They're chosen by,
They're
or they're
not
not,
residents.
They're not
Like-
residents.
oh, so it's like,
Finance
it's
director.
finance,
It's
it's
finance,
procurement or something,
it's
or-
director of planning and development, it's the
Is that set
assessor.
out in the state law? Is that-
Yeah,
Yeah, so
It's
it's,
the
that's not a
assessor.
council.
It's, let's see, director of finance, director of planning and development, director of urban housing, director of housing, assessors, and then 3 counselors.
So it's not-
Who are appointed by the president.
Correct, who, when the committee first came aboard, Joanne Buntich sent a email to the last town council administrator asking who would be interested in serving as counselors, that she needed 3 to serve on the TIF and the tie, so that's how it became, and they're appointed.
But are those appointments by the council president approved by the council?
No,
No, it's just whoever
they're
wanted
like
to be part of it.
liaisons, because
Well, they're not liaisons, because they are
Yeah,
part of the.
member-
No, but I mean, the approval process is most similar to the way the liaisons are, you're just
Yeah, we've
assigned.
never,
I'll
never
take
put
a look
the
at the
item
statute,
before the
because
council.
I'm just not familiar with it, and I'm curious because.
Well, I think it ought to
I
be
just don't know where that
addressed.
falls in
I don't
here.
either, but it ought to have a name, what it is.
Yep.
If it's a unique thing, what
Right.
is it? It's
Yeah,
not a
I-
standing committee, but it is a standing committee, but it's not the same.
Okay, we'll take a look at the statute and see, I need to start there.
So I think we continue to read through this and see where it might make sense to move things among paragraphs, so a layperson could read this and come away with a good understanding of the respective committees.
Yeah, what happens if we have 11A and 11B and we want to make 11B go in front of 11A?
And you would
Just
call it
change it.
11A.
Okay. No, I just didn't know, I'm like, because I didn't know with like the previous amendment, and obviously it wouldn't line up because the body of the items changes. Wasn't sure how that worked.
Well, yeah, I mean, we just need to figure out how you guys want it to read, and then what we'll end up doing, because it's gonna be, you know, I think you would present the whole thing with red lines, you know, to the council as an amendment, as a motion to approve this, and then you all would start amending it, you know?
Based on, like, I understand, the idea, like, it seems like ad hoc things are after the ad hoc rule. I think the first and last paragraph of 11B could go in Rule 11. And then the paragraphs that are specific to standing can be 11B. I don't think
And then there could
committee
be an
parameters and
11C.
guidelines is necessary. I think you could actually make 11 committee parameters and get guidelines, or council committee parameters and guidelines, and just put the general statements.
So you're
Up
saying
there.
blend them together.
Yeah, I like that.
Sort of, so
I
it,
like that.
the way that I wrote it, it makes sense, is it only has 11, 11A, 11B. And then obviously if we find a tip and tie needs to be added, then we can do that, but, because those,
Well,
the
we have
first,
11, 11A, 11B, so what are you saying, to move
So on-
11B into 11?
exactly, yeah. And then 11A would remain ad hoc, and 11B would become standing committees.
And that would be highlight anything that's different, it's unique to that, so
Yeah.
someone could look at it and say, that is unique to
Yeah,
those.
and these specific paragraphs look like they, I mean, we
They'd be
already
very,
separated it.
they'd be
It says-
very tight, I mean, they'd be very tight to say exactly what was unique about an ad hoc or what was unique about a standing, I think.
Okay, we can play around with that,
Yeah, I would like to see that, I think that would help.
okay. And then
Here's the-
11C is a new, I added that because I periodically get questions about liaisons, and then I forget where it is in the code. And that's where it is in the code, it's in 241.8. And that's essentially what's in there, is it's a reporting relationship. And I know I've gotten questions from folks saying, you know, our counselors who are liaisons, are they part of the deliberation of the board? And the answer is no, they're not. They're not board members. They're there to report back to the council on what's going on with a particular committee, to work with the chair to figure out how that reporting relationship, what that looks like. But they're not board members, they're not in executive session of those boards, and they're not voting, and they're not participating other than the way I think any member of the public would participate. But they're there to, you know, kind of be a liaison between the committee and the council.
I think this is hugely important because this came up when I was first on the council. And there was discussion about the rules, and I said, well, where are they printed? And the person said, well, I'm just telling you them. I said, well, I need to see them. No, I just told you them. So this is, I think, extremely important to put in.
Yeah,
I
because
really
you
like
have to
this.
search for this in the town code.
Yeah, you have
actually
to
find
search,
it.
and that's not good. It should be right here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's just some information so you guys can look at it later on.
Thanks.
So,
Actually,
That's what guides us.
can we jump back up to the top of that page?
yeah.
Top of
So-
what page?
Well, 11B, 11B.
11B?
Which starts with
Above
ad hoc
11C,
committees?
yeah.
Yeah, so the top, just above Rule 11C, that top of that page.
Yep.
So it talks about the ad hoc committees, which we're gonna move, okay? And then you've got the council administrator shall record the minutes. And then further down, meetings of committees may be called by the chairperson. All committees of the town council should keep records of proceedings, and a copy of the record should be filed with the town clerk and the town council administrator. Aren't we having the town council administrator be, how many different committees do you do appointments committee and obviously the ad hoc, right?
Yep, I do 5 ad hocs, the appointments committee, the TIF, the tie, the human services, and any other committee that doesn't have staff support from the town. Like if there's a committee that is, like the human services doesn't have anybody to do their minutes or post their agendas or set their, schedule their meetings, so I do that for Cheryl. If there's another committee that doesn't have staff support, then they call me and ask me to, so I do the minutes of any committee that needs the staff support that doesn't currently have it.
I was just wondering if that really isn't the way things really work, that paragraph there. You know what I'm saying? Because she's
The second
the
paragraph.
council administrator is really this person, but it says the committee shall keep records of the proceedings and a copy of the record should be filed with the town clerk and the council administrator
Mhm.
within 30 days following each meeting. Isn't she it?
Well,
I guess the question is would there ever be a place where, Cindy, you were not doing all of those minutes, we might be delegating that to somebody else, or that a committee would have a willing participant, or
Well, each committee has the opportunity to elect a clerk if they so choose. Any standing committee, any other committee, if they choose, and that is the person that would do the meeting minutes, like the airport commission and all, because we have 44
No, I know.
boards,
Well, that's-
and I don't do them all. It just depends on if they can get somebody to do that role inside the committee or not.
But if they can't.
Then it's me.
No, for any particular
well, but when you're
meeting.
talking about like the airport commission, like that's not an advisory commission to the council.
No.
So that, I think what we're talking about here, that's the beginning of this paragraph.
It's just a generic.
Well, this one started with all standing and ad hoc committees of the council, and then it says standing committees will do whatever ad hoc committees. So these are really committees of the council, because the committees of the town are in the code, and I think they're the ones who kind of have their clerks and do all that.
Okay, I'm just wondering, would it be worthwhile to
To
Specifically-
reflect reality.
reflect reality for a change? Reflect reality, or put in which committees this applies to and say, appointments, blah, 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 blah. Instead of just saying, I just think, to me, when I was reading that again, it just seemed confusing to me about who was responsible for
Mhm. I suspect that this was written when maybe there were more standing committees as opposed to ad hoc committees. And I also suspect it may have been written this way to make it clear that at the end of the day, the committee is responsible to comply
Mhm.
with the open meeting law, which is you have to keep minutes, you have to post your agenda, you have to do all those things. The reality is they have help. You know?
Right. And for the most part, do the committees that you do not give administrative support to, do they post their minutes? Do they have the minutes available? Is that happening?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. Yeah, there are some committees that may not get their minutes posted timely, but they all have to have their agendas posted timely.
Well,
to
what
hold the
committees
meeting.
are we talking about now? We're not talking about the town committees, right? So I just wanna make sure we're all
That's what I'm
talking
kinda-
about.
You talking about like
Confused on.
zoning board of appeals kind of thing, or?
I
Those are
think,
not
I think if it
committees of
says
the
here, the
council.
president shall be a non-voting ex officio member of all committees.
But we're
All committees.
ad
all
hoc
town
and stand,
council-
no,
yeah,
ad hoc and standing committees of
town
the council.
council, so maybe we
Yeah.
need to say that in that
Should we-
first sentence.
And that's why 11B, I added the word of the council, all
Yeah.
standing and ad hoc
So
committees
maybe
of
we
the
need to add
council.
that.
To
in this.
differentiate from the committees of the town.
Yeah, maybe we
Correct.
need to put that in here.
Well, I think if we moved it, like we were kind of talking about before.
Yeah, if we
and
really
made Rule
clarify
11,
it, yeah.
you know, standing and ad hoc committees of the council,
Council.
then everything under that rule is clearly related to only those
So
two.
why don't we, I
We
was
need to
saying,
I think you
define
guys should rework
which
this
committees
section.
are
Yeah, maybe we
Council.
could come back to it after you guys rework it,
Would be
because
helpful.
it's really confusing.
sections 11, 11A, 11B.
As evidenced by this conversation.
And I also, I find it hard to believe, I mean, I believe it because it's happening, that Cynthia is doing all of this. It seems,
You don't know that Cynthia sleeps at night or has a life
no, it
outside of this
seems, it
place?
seems absurd to
Yes,
me.
it does.
That this is just like, we'll just say she's gonna do this. I mean, it's almost unmanageable. She has other things she needs to do to support the council. I
You guys
think-
have too many.
I know you have this many committees, I just think, you know, when this is, we have to write this with an expandable bandwidth that handles, if you have a situation like this, it's really
You
unfair
know, the problem is,
to do this.
for a committee, you have to take minutes.
Yes,
And you don't want a committee member doing that, because then you're not really able to actively participate if you're
Correct.
sitting there scribbling everything down. I think what you will hear is, we don't necessarily have the town staff to do it.
correct.
So, yeah, I think it's a real issue, but at the end of the day, if you have a committee, you have to have minutes, you have to do certain things.
I know, but if you didn't have someone with this level of expertise, then the entire thing falls apart. I mean, that she's stepping forward and doing all of these.
No, I understand that, I'm just saying, these are
But it
committees,
seems like
these
a-
are committees of the council.
No, of the council, but is this a fair thing? I'm asking, I guess I'm asking you.
Yeah, I mean,
Is this an
It-
accurate,
This is the first time there's been 5 ad hoc
Right.
subcommittees at once.
exactly,
Typically, it's only 1 or 2 to
Yeah.
handle certain
Next time we
issues,
should
and it's
stagger that.
manageable.
right,
And it's
Yeah.
very manageable. Right now, I work 7 days a week.
that's what I'm saying, it's unsustainable.
But it's only because there's 5 committees. It's not always gonna be like that, though.
I know, but should we write this, or maybe we need to do a limit on the number? that
Yeah.
Makes it
The
sustainable.
limiting the creation of them.
Yes, like you said, staggered, I just think that has to be considered, so we consider.
Yeah,
You know, the parameters of what is realistic, because this is not realistic.
no, typically, there's not 5 ad hocs all
Yeah,
at
you
once.
can't possibly, I mean,
There's
no,
1 or 2 maybe here and there.
yeah,
But this
well,
is
it's
the
hard on
first-
us too, you know,
Yeah,
we're
oh,
members
yeah.
of 3 of them,
'Cause you're
like-
on,
Kristen was
3 out of
saying,
5.
trying to keep our heads on straight, you know,
yeah, this is the first time it's been overwhelming for all of us.
for all of us.
Yeah, because there's so many of them.
yeah, it's a lot of work for everyone.
I think, I don't know, I think 3 is a maximum,
Yeah, that's up to you guys. That's
because
not
you're
up to
still
me.
running the council. So
Correct.
That's 4 right there, I mean, that's already,
Okay, so do we wanna say a max of 3 ad hocs at any time?
yes, I think so. Like, I would like to see, I mean, we're asking you guys to kind of make this thing make sense.
Well, we'll
and-
play around with it, but I just wanna understand what the direction
Yeah,
is.
I think
that we're
3, I
going.
don't know, what do you guys,
Yeah, I mean,
they could have been
Um,
staggered, some are
they
more
could have been.
important than others.
Well, I think there are 2 that haven't started.
Haven't even started yet.
No, because
So
we're
there's
having
5 ad
difficulty
hocs,
coming
but
up.
there's really only 3 right now, because 2 haven't
Yeah,
done
because
anything.
it's
Are there
difficult to
3
come
right
up with meeting space.
So the
Who's-
reality is.
Who's
there are
underway,
3.
housing, the
Us
rules, and the zoning.
correct. Committee on
Review on
committees,
committees has.
Committee on
committee on
committees.
committees is not.
We haven't looked at town-owned property.
That's right,
Right.
town
And the-
property.
And the standing committees has not met yet. Those are the other two that have not met yet.
See, so we've
I
we've got
still feel
So
three,
you've got three.
and it's already
That's a lot.
overwhelming.
That's a
I
lot.
think 3 is even too many. to be
That's what I'm
honest.
thinking, 3 is already
I think 3
overwhelming.
is too many. I think we should have 2.
Okay, I'll.
And I mean, maybe if the
Let me
town.
play the devil's advocate on that.
The town
If you
council
have an
is
issue,
I'm not gonna stop writing until
Yeah.
you guys get to something.
if you
Sorry.
have an issue, I would say you have 2 ad hoc committees already, and you have an issue come up. And you say, well, we'd like to have an ad hoc committee. Well, no, we can't do that. So how do we discuss that? The rules say you only have 2.
Well, it's not that you can't do it, it's if we have these two, then when they're done with their work, we'll create 2 more.
Say it's an emergent issue that you want to.
Okay, then let's put language in there that says the town council president may bring
Under
forth to
extenuating
the town council, and the
circumstances.
town council will deliberate and discuss based on, you know, on support, whether creation of a 3rd ad hoc committee is feasible for the time and effort of all of those involved.
Well, let me just say this. First of all, the town council has to approve the creation of an ad hoc committee. And if staff comes forward and says, time out, you know, you're gonna have to find other support for that committee, and maybe that's something that the town council will decide to do. I just think putting an arbitrary number on it,
I don't think it's arbitrary.
well, I do. I think it's an arbitrary number, whether it be 2, 3, 5, or 7, 9. Put any number on it, I think it takes away the discretion of the council to establish a committee that it deems necessary. If the council says, well, we recognize our administrator is out straight, and we direct the town manager to provide staff, and that's what you could do.
I was gonna suggest that maybe you wait until you have your full committee here and discuss it.
You know, I mean, unless we want to say development of ad hoc committees over 2, they need to figure out their own support. I mean, I guess there's just only
But
so
how do
many.
you, how do you do
Yeah.
that?
No, and, well, I mean,
This,
you know,
this only town staff, I mean.
Right.
yeah, if it was me and it was important enough, I'd go home and watch the tape and take the minutes. But that's just who I am. I mean, I come from corporate America. If you want something done, you gotta get it done yourself. You're not always waiting for somebody to provide you, somebody at the level of Cindy Lovell. That's the reality.
I am
She-
uncomfortable with expecting the councilors to take minutes.
Yeah, I guess my point is like, we have some committees whose minutes are not even being put up because they literally they don't have support. So the committee chair is having to go back and redo their own minutes. And I guess it's just like, we have to be realistic. We need Cindy to be not,
No, I
you know,
realize
not
that.
burnt out at working 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. I think we, you know, and I get your point, we could say we want more staff, but I don't even know if that's legitimate within our budget or where that would come from, how we would hire that person, or how long that would take. I mean, it's just like how much, you know.
Human resources has to come to. They did it one before. Did you know, human resources have a temp?
Yeah, they do. They still hire for temporal secretaries.
Anyway, we could discuss it.
Yeah,
But it's
I
something
guess I'm
think-
just wondering
But
why.
I think,
we
I think
haven't
this
done
time
that
around
before.
is just unusual because 5 were created all at
Yeah.
once. I mean, I've been here 12 years, and this is the first time I've ever had 5 subcommittees created at once.
But again, right now, the impact is 3. because
Right.
2 aren't doing it.
Well, you can't even find a place to meet. I mean,
Well, that's
there's
the problem with having 5 all at
Yeah.
once is meeting places
But
because,
we're having 3 all at once.
yeah,
I mean,
it's.
in
other-
a theory,
We say
there's
we're
5.
having 3, we're really having 4 because she's gonna do the town council too. So I always, you know,
Well,
add.
just to
add-
No, but
Yeah,
she's not
just
doing the
doing a
minutes.
regular job.
I know,
Which
but I'm
is-
just
yeah,
saying, that's
which
a
is not
full-time
doing the
job.
minutes for the
Right,
town council,
but
the
it's
town
still-
clerk is doing that.
Right.
So it's the agenda, and then that's, you know, you're putting it together, and then,
Right.
She's
you know, other
answering all my
people,
emails.
Mark, and I review everything.
Anyway, yeah, discussion, I think Craig is wise for the full committee. And, because we want to be effective in what we do.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to skip on to the next, Rule 12, and then give you guys a chance to,
So you guys were good with 11C, right, the liaisons?
yeah, I think that's very good.
All right. 12. I think I made, did I just make that?
Did you add the red line appointments required 2 readings?
I did, I just don't know if that's new from when we last did it. I can't remember, maybe I forgot to highlight that.
Well, we'll just start and work our way through.
But yeah, and I mentioned it in a council meeting that I have a problem keep waiving my 12. And I know,
We did it again at the last meeting.
right, and I have a problem with that. If it's gonna require 2 reads, it requires. And, you know, the argument's made that the person, that committee is short. Well, that person can attend the committee, whatever, but. Again, we can follow the rule.
So just,
Anyway.
yeah, I don't disagree with that, but just to be clear, the appointments is an actual town council rule. It's not in the charter, it doesn't come from somewhere
Oh, it
else.
doesn't.
No, so it is a rule that is your rule. So I just wanna point that out.
Yeah, that's just my personal feeling.
That's actually why you can suspend it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole rationale is that the appointments committee interviews the person, makes a nomination, the first read to give the public the chance to weigh in if they so desire, or you know, make it public this person's going to be appointed, and then you do the appointment. And you just bypass that whole process if you suspend the rule. Why have the rule? If it comes from the appointment committee, then it goes to a confirmation of the council, and that's it, that's the end of the discussion.
And
One way or
there's,
the other.
and there's no way to make it so that you can't suspend the rule, because the town council always has the ability to suspend.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
rule.
if it's a town council rule, you all can, you know, one thing you can do is maybe raise the quantum of vote to suspend a rule. But I don't know, because the whole point of the rules is it's supposed to serve all of you in conducting your meeting.
Right.
And so when all of you say, hey, tonight, that's not a good rule for us, you can suspend the rule, because again, it's supposed to serve you. But to your point, this one gets suspended a lot, and that makes you
So why not?
wonder, like,
Why have-
is it a good rule? And if it is a good rule, then you really should follow it. And if it's not a good rule, then you should change it.
Well, should we say then that, you know, the appointments committee makes a recommendation to the council, and the council votes on it when it comes up, and that's end of discussion.
Well, I guess it's, do we trust the appointments committee that they've done a good process? And to your point, you know, does the public, I mean, that was the whole point of the airport doing their presentation to us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we don't allow 2 reads, we're then getting rid of, we're trusting the appointments
We're
committee.
trusting the
And we're
appointments
not
committee.
allowing, but then we're not allowing the public to have any.
Then
It's
you don't
it's a
suspend the rule.
transparency thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what it is. It adds process to make it more visible to the public.
Exactly, well, I agree.
Do
But
we
if
want
you
to
don't-
make
Yeah.
some statement within here to the justification of why it has 2 reads, so that,
No, I don't think that's necessary, I just.
well, not everybody knows what you're thinking, Craig, because they're not watching this and they're not here, because I value what you're saying, and I value that, what your view of that is, but the problem is that there's some other people who might not be thinking that deep or concerned or.
No, I mean, it's just my personal thing that, you know, yeah.
Well, you're on the appointments committee, what do you think?
Well, and also, there's a vote to suspend the rules, so you should vote no. You know?
Do you vote no? Did you vote no to suspend the rules?
I think
I'm gonna go back and watch it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think we're strategic in that if we're suspending them, it's for somebody that is either, we have a quorum issue.
I think you guys suspend it alone. Sometimes there's a reason, but I think sometimes it's like, let's just
Really?
get,
I don't,
it gets suspended a
oh,
lot.
what do you think, Cindy? I don't feel like we
It has
suspended,
gotten,
I feel like it's for
the
reasons.
ability to suspend the rule has been more overly used in the past than They used to only suspend the rule when there was a quorum issue on a regulatory board. That was the only time they ever
That makes
suspended
That
the
makes
rule.
sense.
Yeah, no, I
If you,
know.
if the zoning board of appeals cannot move forward
Yeah.
because they do not have a quorum,
That makes sense.
I would have no problem with that.
That was the only time it was ever used in the past by the council. Other than that, the appointments always went through a 2-read rule, always. Unless it was the zoning or the planning, or it was a regulatory board that could not meet because they did not have quorum. And we were, recommending somebody, then they would suspend it. And other than that, no.
I mean, like, as far as the last, when we suspended it last week or whatever that was, I think the whole premise behind that was like, we started this ad hoc process in what month was that? March?
March,
And here we are in August.
we're still gonna get a guy
So, I
on.
mean, it's kind of like, I guess we felt like maybe it's a good idea to get this person in place because we already had a person that we did 2 reads on and it didn't work out. And then we had to wait for this, that, and the other thing. It's like, let's fish or cut bait, because at some point this guy's gonna either get on there or he's not. It wasn't like it was a total surprise because it was the whole go around at the previous meeting about putting him in because President Penn was gonna put him on there without any of the appointments committee being, I mean, it was like, kind of like, let's go, we gotta get this done. So I feel like that was a legit logical process for suspending the rules, not just because it's Thursday night, let's suspend the rules, I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of vacancies, there's been a lot of turnaround, and I think the appointments committee being hamstrung with the whole ad hoc thing put us behind. Like, I just think it's a confluence of factors that is not something that I would want to be typical, but I feel like we've been trying to get our work done because we've been just so put back for so many reasons. But that's just my view because I'm on the committee and I would just feel like.
Well,
So-
I made my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, and I agree with your opinion.
I mean, if you don't change it, which I probably wouldn't, maybe when you're having the discussion with the council about the rules, you have a discussion about sort of suspending this rule judiciously. For actual reasons that
Right.
that make a difference.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
So I changed the next one. What did it say? I don't know where it was. So I added in office of president or vice president, because that's what we're talking about.
Right.
And then I added, so the first sentence, I think was the
I
same.
think that was the original.
Yeah, in the event the president can no longer serve, vice president assumes if a vacancy occurs in the office of vice president. And then I just clarified, either because the vice president can no longer serve, or because the vice president has assumed the powers and duties of the president. Then the council shall elect a new vice president from among its members. Now, the next sentence, I'm trying to see what I did here. I read this sentence a million times and I found it incomprehensible. The election, so I think what I changed it was, the election of a new vice president shall occur as soon as practical, but with the goal of ensuring that no office shall remain vacant for more than 2 regular meetings. Although now that I'm saying that, I'm wondering if there's something in the charter. I have to check that.
Well, and this goes back too to, again, in December, there was quite a bit of discussion when we were gonna suspend the rules with the nominating and electing.
Well, this is
So
in
does
the
this-
event of vacancies.
No, but
Yeah.
but that's what I was gonna ask, in the event of vacancy, does it then fall back to the rules that someone has to be nominated at one meeting and then elected at a second, again, for this whole transparency piece? So there's 2 meetings right
Oh,
there.
I see what you're saying. I don't think that's the case.
But what is the process? I don't know
That's
what
a
it
very good,
is.
that's a very good question.
Yeah, so the question is,
So
do
2
we
meetings are
revert
already
back to
gone.
the original rules
Do we
for
revert,
election?
we need to
Yeah,
clarify that
that's-
we then revert back to a nominating process.
Yeah, as outlined in rule, whatever
Right.
number
Yeah,
this
So
is.
back to go.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Do not collect $200.
Do not collect $200, that's right. But there's the 2 meetings right there, that it's vacant. It has to be vacant if we're going by the rules for 2 meetings. Right? Because you
What
have
would be
to, one
vacant
for
for two?
nominating.
Well, no, it would be like vacant for 2 meetings and then would we start
Why
doing
did I
the
think
nominating?
that?
So it'd be
Right.
another
You
2
know what?
meetings?
Or would you start
I
as
think
soon
as
as,
soon as the vacancy occurs.
as soon as it occurs?
Oh, I took out the vacancy on the council shall follow the town charter, because I just feel like that's not a town council rule. If a councilor resigns, you know, then, you know,
Then
we
the
follow
town
the charter, like that doesn't need to be repeated in here. That's why, I'm just trying to figure out why I took this out. The vacancy of the office. Okay, so we need to add a process.
Yeah, add a process. And just think about the two meetings, because you have to have 2 meetings.
Because I was thinking it meant if the vice president spot is vacant.
Well, it would always be, right? If
If there's a
If the
vacancy in the
president-
president, then the vice president moves up, then you have a vacancy in the vice president.
Or-
Or if the president is the president and the vice president says, I can't serve for whatever reason, then you have a vacancy.
then you have a vacancy.
Just.
Okay, because the way it was written, it said like before 2 regular meetings have passed. So does that mean 1 meeting? Like,
I know, it didn't seem right. It seemed like
I
if
kept
you
reading
miss,
it saying, I
if
don't
you,
know what this means.
if you miss 2 meetings, then, you know, you're vanished, I guess. That's what it came across to me, right?
All right,
Well, yeah, kind of.
But is that, you know, since it takes 2 meetings to do our process?
if it's that initial process, so let me go
Why,
back.
why,
um,
why don't we just,
Council
why don't we
officers.
just, why don't we just do this? The election of a new vice president shall occur as soon as practical. Here,
Yeah.
But you wanted the process as to how, is
Well, I
there a
want to
nomination,
process it
right?
as to how you.
Right,
so,
right.
right, and then
Craig,
Right.
you go, Craig, you go back to nominating
You
at
go,
one meeting
they,
and then voting.
electing at the next. Why can't
Okay.
we do that?
So we would nominate,
As outlined in Rule 1.
Sure.
Would be the same process.
Same process.
yeah, where we would nominate on the first
First
meeting and then
meeting, elect
elect
on
on
the
the
second.
second.
But it says in December.
Well,
I mean,
we'll,
I'm just saying,
we'll- yeah,
We'll
well,
just wordsmith it.
yeah, well, I'll play around with that. I do want to double check the charter and make sure, I don't think there's anything in there, I think the charter is focused on a vacancy on the
Let's just
council.
get rid of
Yeah,
that
I was
confusing
gonna say,
sentence
That's why I took
about.
that out.
must
Yeah,
be
but-
vacant from words. So just say, as soon as practical. And then.
Yeah, I like that, Craig. Yeah.
Okay, so take out, but with the, that's why I wrote it as with the goal of ensuring, to make it more aspirational, but to kind of say like, you really should elect somebody.
So then, you know, when the vacancy occurs, nominations shall be held.
At the next meeting,
Elections will be held at the next.
nominations at the next meeting,
But
followed
how do you
by-
know that a vacancy has occurred?
Because I dropped it.
That's what I'm saying. No, but,
Or I say, how about-
what if you're out sick, but
Well,
you're gonna,
but
No, the vacancy is that you can no longer serve.
so you can no longer serve.
That's the
That's what that
language that
means.
was here.
But then the 2 meeting things make it sound like, oh my gosh, you just, like if you had a problem in
Oh, no,
September.
No,
Like you break your
no.
leg and you
In the
can't,
event
and
that
you've
the
had
president
massive
of the
surgery.
council-
and you
Right.
can't come
No,
for
no,
2
in the
meetings.
event that the president of the council can no longer serve, the vice president shall assume the powers and duties of the president. If a vacancy occurs in the office of vice president, either because the vice president can no longer serve or because the vice president has assumed the powers and duties of the president as set forth in the preceding sentence.
What is the definition of no longer serve though?
well, we don't have
I
we don't have, for example, an attendance requirement.
Right, we don't.
We don't say that if you miss more than 2 meetings or 2 meetings in a
Right, we
row
don't.
or anything else, and nor should I don't think we should.
Yeah, there is something for the board members of the town that I don't know if that's to the council.
So even more reason to take
3
that.
consecutive meetings in a row for the standing, for the boards, committees and commissions.
Yeah, that's in the charter, so I have to
Yeah.
double check that, but that's not for the council.
No.
It's really.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it reinforces what Craig said, take the 2 meetings out, because that just, puts an unnecessary burden that's not appropriate to what
Well, the
you've
two meetings,
said.
I think, is after you've
Determined
determined
the
that
vacancy
you,
is
that there
occurred.
is actually a vacancy. It
Oh,
doesn't,
after
that
you
doesn't
determine.
make it a vacancy.
Okay.
It's not like, oh, you
It's not
weren't
like
here
you
for
missed two
No,
meetings.
no, no, no. It's, you know, we know there's a vacancy either because Craig says I can't serve or because Craig has assumed the duties of president. Then we know there's a vacancy in the vice president. Then it's, hey, 2 meetings shouldn't go by.
Well, the 2 meetings would be,
We go back to the process.
yeah,
So, okay, we'll play around with it. We'll give you something to look at.
okay.
And inquiries and investigations, I took out this paragraph because it's basically the charter, so I just said in accordance with the section of the
That's
I
charter.
mean, it's 7 o'clock. and we won't start at 6.
Well, we have
Sure. I mean, that's, there's not too much after it. I
investigations.
mean, it's a-
Well, you just
Yeah, I mean, I
took
think
that
my
out.
edits are very minor. They really were like, you know, punctuation really.
Well, you took out the beginning, but you left the other
I
2.
took out the beginning because I was referencing
210. It's
That's
on-
just-
210.
But you left the other stuff in.
Yeah. I don't think all of this is in the charter. I think this is fleshing out within the charter. I can double check that, but I think when I had looked at it, I was like, okay, this is explaining how you implement what's in the charter, but I took out the actual charter section. It's in the charter.
Well, I think it's probably a good time to break.
Okay.
We can pick up, because you guys have a lot of stuff that we do, right? I think you do. But I think at the next meeting, we can finish this portion and then we can move on to what we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, which our public comment, Larry Ward brought up, which is now integrating some of the ideas that we've seen in the other municipalities and what we've gotten from public comment.
Well, I think the municipalities and the public comment, we should be doing at separate times. So maybe we want to go with public comment to clean up our own document before we start throwing other stuff in and then going back to what our residents are looking at. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not sure.
I'm just saying, Betty was like, oh, well, we'll look at the other towns and what our public comment says. And I'm like, those are, again, my brain can't like integrate both of those.
She's saying maybe do the
Pick one.
public comment that's specific to us,
To our code that's already in our
and
hands,
then,
take public comment to make sure there's not something already on the plate that's working it, because our residents probably haven't read all of the other town.
See, I would do it the opposite. I would do the other towns because again, it's their internal rules and it's a good way to kind of say, pick and choose things that you think are good in other internal rules. I think the public comment, and I have to go back and look, there are a lot of things in some of what I read, and I looked at it very quickly, that I think are not accurate. But I also really, this is gonna come out wrong, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I think public comment on your rules only goes so far. I mean, I don't think it should be given the same weight as in some of the other committees and the other work of the council, because these are your rules and how you conduct yourselves. And I think,
Oh, I agree with you. These are the town council rules, but if the town council is happy with how they go, the public certainly could have input on it. We welcome the comment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if there's something that when we read through the public comments that makes sense.
right, I wouldn't
You know,
dismiss it.
yeah,
out of
yeah,
hand.
yeah, I
That's
mean-
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Right, I'm not either. I'm just
People
saying that,
talking
you
past
know,
each other.
there's a certain, here's my view of the world, but it's not really your world, it's the council's world.
Yeah.
I guess that's the way to put it.
okay, well, I think, hopefully we'll have the full committee here next time. And we'll have the new language here, and we'll be able to look at that and then wrap this up. And then we can have another discussion about this to integrate as we go forward. But I think we're on a good track. I think we've done a lot. I think it's been a great review. A lot of things have come up. So do we want
Motion
to?
to agree.
do you want to make it?
No, well, no,
I'd like to
we're
make
gonna hit our
a
next
motion
stage
to approve
first.
the minutes.
So I confuse
Oh, we have
that
to-
motion to adjourn.
We have to,
I'd like
Do
to
you wanna
make a
maybe talk about another meeting?
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
but that's
yeah.
what I'm
I'd
saying.
like to make-
Stop adjourning.
Stop adjourning.
I withdraw.
We wanna go to Cynthia to look at another date. for
No,
us.
I'd like
What?
to make a motion to approve the minutes as written,
Oh, there
going
you
through the
go.
agenda post.
Oh, we go back to the agenda, thank you.
Good job.
Yes.
If not, we just do it next time, but all right, she's handed it first.
Second.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, now we can establish the next meeting.
Well, we have two people that are missing, so we can't establish a date.
Why
I think
can't
we should establish a
I think
date,
we should establish it.
because you know what? Us three can still come, and
That's
if
right.
it doesn't
if they
work,
don't
we can
come, they
change the
don't
date,
come.
but if we don't book it, it gets harder and harder, right?
Right.
All right.
It does.
Because
What
next
is
week is
today,
a holiday,
Tuesday?
so that's, you know,
Yeah, Tuesday.
Tuesdays are good.
okay. Tuesday the tenth? Is that open, Cindy?
What time?
Well, is that enough time for you folks to do what you need to do?
And I'm also looking to see what.
You do what you need to do between now and then. They're thinking they can't.
How about you wanna go to the 24th?
Let's give them another week.
Yeah, another week. might be
Yeah,
good.
that's just, I think that's unfair.
Well, the week of the 17th is town council meeting, do you really wanna do that? Okay, do you wanna do the 24th?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, and maybe could we, so the 24th, what time, Cindy?
What time does the committee want to, the room, this room's open all day.
I mean,
I have to work that Tuesday. Do we wanna do earlier? You wanna,
I'll work.
okay, so you wanna do 5:30?
5:30 sounds reasonable.
Okay. And do we wanna set any other goals that we should be working on before we show up on that day, or do you think that whole meeting will take up all this time?
No, I think what perhaps.
Because we
start
basically
discussing
have a
other
month.
charters that
Right.
we read that
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe specific
Come with
paragraphs.
some suggestions.
That we start discussing the charters, the sections that we like.
So we're gonna look to you guys for a lot of that.
Yeah,
right. That'll be for us.
So we start cooking out sections,
Yeah.
maybe sending it to Karen and Alice.
Cindy, can you email all of us to ask us to look at the other things and be ready on the 27th with some just suggestions, just because the other members aren't here?
The other towns, all the information that you sent? Yeah.
Just so that they know that because we have a month.
Right.
Yep.
You said the 27th, it's 24th.
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, the 24th. I had to put 17 and 24 together. 24th, 5:30.
Yeah.
I looked at that, he's gonna move to adjourn.
Oh, that's right.
I think that was pretty safe.
All those
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Okay, we are adjourned.
Perfect.